I think Raging Bolt can be an absolute cheat code for Regulation G. I think it's the perfect partner for Pokemon like Koraidon, Groudon, and even on some of those balance cores with like Zacian and Zamazenta. So today I want to go over how Raging Bolt's a cheat code and why you should be using it on your team. Statistically speaking, Raging Bolt is basically like adding a second restricted Pokemon to your team. And also having the photosynthesis ability really makes it take advantage of being able to use the boost in the sun, and its overall bulk is just very nice, and then it has very good support moves. Now, I know Kyurem is not exactly the best restricted Pokemon, but we're talking a Pokemon that is non-restricted that you can add to your team to support these restricted Pokemon. So I think the statistics are valuable to put side by side and kind of show you guys why I think Raging Bolt is such a good Pokemon. So Raging Bolt and Kyurem share the same HP stat. They differ in attack, but Raging Bolt's a special Pokemon, so that doesn't matter. Raging Bolt has one more point in defense, a blistering 137 special attack stat, which is 7 points higher than Kyurem. One less point in Spadef, however, it carries Snarl and Assault Vest usually, which helps that out tremendously versus Kyurem. And then it does lose some of that speed stat, but you got to remember you have the Thunderclap on Raging Bolt to kind of control speed, which is a special Sucker Punch move, which is a huge, huge deal for this Pokemon. Now, I want to start off by talking about Raging Bolt and Koraidon. These two pair pretty nicely together. I chose to use Raging Bolt Koraidon because the Raging Bolt can get the natural photosynthesis sun boost that Koraidon brings in when it brings in the drought. And you have the Assault Vest that really helps soak up those special attacks. Koraidon's a very physical threat with Flare Blitz and Collision Course. You could just knock out things like Parapagos that may wall this Pokemon up with Calm Mind Boost, as well as having that Stab Collision Course that could just basically OHKO it. There's situations where you could like Thunderclap if it's full HP and not Terra, chip the ability, and then just finish it off with a Collision Course. Obviously, this is a pretty obvious play, so they could just go for the Calm Mind. And then you have the overall damage coming from like the Draco Meteor that could come in, and you could just kind of set up your Koraidon on that turn. So I think these two pair well together. We'll start with the Raging Bolt though. Terra Fairy has just been its bread and butter since it's been good, honestly, with the Assault Vest. I think that this is a good combination for this team. Koraidon really doesn't want the Assault Vest. It wants to clear Amulet. So I think it's fine to use the Assault Vest. Photosynthesis. Important change I made to this, though, is I added Thunderbolt to this Pokemon over Electro Web. Pelipper is getting a lot of usage right now, and for good reason. When you have things like Calyrex Shadow, Calyrex Ice, Kyogre, Groudon, etc., doing all these spread moves, it's going to be very hard to get an Electro Web off versus those Pelipper because they have the Wide Guard to kind of counter the meta, right? So with this build on the Koraidon team to kind of support your Sun mode, since Pelipper naturally does counter the Sun as well, I've added Thunderbolt over Electro Web, and I just think that this is a lot better. Draco Meteor just for raw damage. I think combining Draco Meteor with Photosynthesis boost, as well as 100 base Collision Course or Flare Blitz, is just insanely good. I think that just having these burst damage options with these two is very scary, and it could definitely clean up things like Amoonguss that could kind of help, be a problem. Even with Terra, right? Like if they Terra Water and you just click the Flare Blitz into them plus a Draco, that should pick them up, I would imagine. Also, the Thunderclap just for the priority. Lastly, we do have Snarl. Even though Wide Guard is here, Snarl is just such a valuable move for things like Terapagos to keep chipping the shell and to essentially just keep the Calm Mind boost to a minimum, so what that way it's just getting the Spadef boost, and then you could just clean it up, with Koraidon. As far as the EV spread here, 156 HP, 68 defense allows you to live a Jolly Chin-Pal Icicle Crash. I think this is pretty big because I don't see many going Stellar Adamant, especially with Koraidon being 135 base speed, getting a speed tie, and you have Miraidon getting a speed tie. Fluttermane is a good partner for this team. So if you were to add Fluttermane to this team, right, you don't even really have to run the booster energy item, right? Like you don't have to run this anymore because you have the Sun. So you could run something like Sash Fluttermane, honestly, or even Specs Flutter could be really, really good on this team. Specs Flutter would enable it to just, do more damage, but the whole point is that you have the Sun. So if the Chin-Pal is here to kind of threaten these Pokemon with the Ice weakness on the Raging Bolt, then you could essentially just, have your Fluttermane support the Sun mode as well. Moonblast, just the standard stuff, probably Dazzling Gleam and Shadow Ball for those opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider. But the whole point is that you don't worry about the speed ties here. So the Electro Web, since it is missing, you could just add Fluttermane, get the speed boost, like, run it Timid Nature with something like, I don't know, 116. You could probably do 36 to get the first bump, honestly. Or just 36 with Specs is very good. Or even like something like this, probably. And then just run enough speed. I like to creep mine up a little bit, just a 4 in Spadef here. And then, I don't know, something like this, I think looks pretty good. Maybe 160, 156 maybe. Yeah, something like this looks pretty good, right? You could take one of those Sucker punches very well, especially with the Terra Fairy on this Pokemon. But this would be good support to this team, I do feel, as well as just a crazy amount of damage. And then for that last move, I mean, you could do Thunderbolt if you wanted to, but you do have the Raging Bolt. So maybe something like Icy Wind for the speed control could be very nice. Since you are faster than these Mirror, actually, with the speed boost, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And you get a good speed creep here. Click those Icy Winds and just sweep up with your Koraidon or your Raging Bolt. I think this would be a good partner for this team for sure. But that's why the Electro Web is missing. You could just add the Icy Wind here, and you don't always have to click it, right? But I did Thunderbolt for a reason for the Pelipper, and that explains why I went with the 180 speed stat here. So 180 speed hits 118. This should outspeed, this actually does outspeed any Modest Pelipper that's running around. So if they're like Sash, Modest, Max Speed, Max Special Attack, you outspeed and you just Thunderbolt and then clean it up with another Pokemon. Pelipper could be an issue for this Pokemon. It resists fighting, it resists fire and the rain, so like it could wall this Pokemon out very nicely. So having something that just threatens Pelipper and is faster is a very nice thing. I put 100 in special attack because it does get the special attack boost here. Modest, if you see 185 to 187, that is getting the bump there. That is pretty much optimal, and that's why I chose Thunderbolt and this EV spread. It is a little more frail than normal, but I do think outspeeding Pelipper in this metagame is going to be a pretty big deal. Obviously, you don't outspeed Timid Pelipper, but outspeeding those Modest Pelippers are going to be very nice. And with Sash, I could see a lot of them running Modest, honestly. Then we move on to the Koraidon here. Terra Fire, just a defensive and offensive Terra. I really like it. Clear Amulet, just to avoid those Incineroars. Collision Course can just chunk down the... honestly, it just OHKOs, actually, I think, Incineroar. And then I chose Flare Blitz here. Another good move that you could run is the Flame Charge, right? Flame Charge is 50 base speed and a 100% chance to raise your user speed by 1. I'm not a big fan, but in the sun, Terra Fire 50 base, you're boosting this up to where it does enough damage. 135 base attack, so you're not really falling off too much on attack, and you can kind of set up a sword stance, so you can get some speed control this way. I personally just like Flare Blitz. I think Flare Blitz is just better, 120 base in the sun. Terra Fire if you need it, and this just deletes things, right? Sword stance, you can set this Pokemon up very nicely, and then Protect. You need Protect on this Pokemon, I do think. EVs, honestly, just went max speed with the EVs. I'd put a little in Spadef. I think you have the Snarl support here with this Pokemon that could really help this Pokemon on the special side. His Spadef is lower, so I put the 4 here instead of the 12. That way I could kind of help it out a little bit more. I chose 196 attack because I did want to max out attack here. You have Sword Stance, so you could just boost up. So I wanted to add some bulk. I mean, it's not the bulkiest Pokemon, but, you know, 100, 115, 100, it's just not the bulkiest, especially for a restricted. But I wanted to add at least a little bit. I think it does help out. You could also like add Incineroar to this version of the team. And with Incineroar, you basically protect its your physical side, excuse me. So you have the physical defense kind of protected with the Intimidate off of your Incineroar. You can go something like Safety Goggles or Citrus if you wanted to. You could run it. Let's see, Safety Goggles here, help out with the Among Us matchup. And then you can you could take advantage of like Sun Flare Blitzes. You could take advantage of like maybe Knockoff. You could taunt maybe for Trick Room teams, and then you could obviously run the Fake Out. You could also, or excuse me, you probably want to run the Parting Shot actually over taunt. You could drop the Knockoff or the Flare Blitz for taunt if you really wanted it. But yeah, this is a Pokemon that you could also see running on one of these teams. Because this is fighting Dragon. You're not really doubling up on the fire typing. That's why Koraidon and Groudon are actually very good paired with Incineroar. And then you're boosting up a support mon's moves in the sun, and essentially just getting maximum value out of Incineroar while also having a great support mon. Instant Flutter is just obviously a good lead too as well. So I think that this would be a good teammate for this team. The next version I want to talk about is this Raging Bolt Groudon team. Now you're going to see this looks very similar. I just think Terra Fairy is just really good right now. Got the Assault Vest, Photosynthesis just to take advantage of the sun that the Groudon does set. I am going to change this Terra to Terra Fire. I forgot to do that. Thunderclap, Thunderbolt, similar to the last one. Again, same reasoning here. Pretty much, it's the exact same EVs. You live the Icicle Crash off Jolly Pow, and you got a way to outspeed and hit that Pelipper that is going to be everywhere in the meta, especially to come counter your Sun team. I put Dragon Pulse over Draco Meteor here. I think that having your Raging Bolt stick in for Groudon is going to be a little bit better. I think with the Koraidon teams, they want to do more burst damage and stick on the field and just do damage. And I think the Draco Burst is just a lot more valuable. Where with the Groudon teams, I think that having Dragon Pulse is just scary. I think Groudon's one that could kind of swap around a little more because it has some more bulk. So you could just take advantage of getting off neutral Dragon Pulses and let your Raging Bolt stick to the field a little longer. That's the reason I put Dragon Pulse over Draco. I mean, obviously, like you could just put Draco Meteor here if you like Draco better. It does have the chance to miss, but it is more burst damage. But I just feel like with this version of the team that you're Groudon's going to kind of want to swap out a little more, and I think Dragon Pulse is more consistent. And then, of course, we have that Snarl, Calyrex, Shadow Riders around, and the Terapagos. So you want to just snarl those Pokemon, and this is just a very, very valuable move, especially with the Assault Vest to take advantage of some of the support. And Thunderclap, just, you know, priority special move. It's very, very good. EVs are exactly the same for this Pokemon. I think that they are similar. They just set the sun, and they want to kind of help the Groudon out. So again, you know, I just went over the EVs earlier. That's why they are there. Good Pokemon. Again, don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it's basically you're doing the same stuff just with two different sun setters. One's a ground setter, and one is a fighting, or one is a ground setter, one is a fighting and dragon setter. Like Incineroar would be a good partner. You know, obviously the Flutter Mane would be a nice partner for this. To take advantage of that. I wouldn't go like hard sun with like walking wake. I think that you can get more value elsewhere, plus you're doubling up on the dragon stuff, but you can add some like nice support Pokemon to this team. But I do want to go over the Groudon actually. The Groudon Clear Amulet, I think this is valuable again for the Incineroar cycles. Terra Fire, as you saw we put on earlier, this is to just get more out of your Heat Crash. This is to get you know, defensive and offensive Terra. You're in the sun, so like water moves feel awkward into this Pokemon when it is in the sun, and that's a pretty big deal. Heat Crash is a big move on Groudon. See, the difference between Groudon and Koraidon is Koraidon weighs 668 pounds and Groudon weighs 2,094 pounds. So this is just a much more valuable move. It just goes off, you know, if it's heavier than the target, right? With Groudon being 2,000 pounds, this is a pretty big deal into Pokemon that aren't restricted. Most restricted do weigh a lot, so you are wanting to target things like Rillaboom or stuff like that. This deletes almost like some of those Pokemon. It's kind of funny. It does a ton of damage. Same with Heavy Slam. Heavy Slam also more power to heavier than the target. It's just a very good coverage move. Checks Flutter, you know, just very, very good for the format, and it does surprising damage into things like, you know, Terra Water Amoonguss or something that resists Heat Crash. Like the Heavy Slam actually can chunk it pretty good, and then Protect. Precipice Blades is its signature move. One of the things that kind of makes Groudon suffer more than the Koraidon, I feel personally, is a bit of consistency with the Precipice Blades, right? With that 85 accuracy. And Rillaboom's on almost every team to check Miraidon, and it's just a very, very good Pokemon. It also can hit you super effective with a Wood Hammer, and that's kind of scary, right? For the Groudon, you do have the Terra Fire defensively for that. But the P-Blades are weakened because it is a spread ground move, right? And one of the secondary effects of the grassy terrain is it weakens spread ground moves. So this is why Groudon might be a little weaker of a partner for this Raging Bolt to take advantage of. But I do still think Groudon is a good Pokemon. It's just not a great Pokemon. I think it will suffer with consistency. As far as the EVs, I decided to add a ton of bulk to this Groudon. 156 attack does hit the bump. So if you look down here, we go from 207 to 209. So we do hit the bump on attack. Precipice Blades is notably, it never kills Incineroar, never gets a KO on Incineroar, but most of the Incineroar, if they are running something like, I don't know, like the Wolf build, right? If you're just like 92 defense, 164 SPDF, and 252, right? This Incineroar is a 50% chance to KO with even a 252 Groudon. With this kind of EV spread, I'm sure the Incineroar will kind of creep this up in the future to make sure they ensure that they live the Groudon Precipice Blades. So I think that the fact that you almost never KO this Pokemon anyway, it's pretty good to just kind of go ahead and get the bump and get this 116 defense. I think the 116 defense is really, really nice because a Wood Hammer off of an Assault Vest Rillaboom is a 30% chance to kill, and it's a guaranteed 3-hit KO versus Grassy Glide. This is pretty good because if you don't have Terra to your availability, or let's say you just don't want to, you know, burn your Terra, the Groudon can stick in through a Rillaboom, and then it can Heat Crash. 4 in SPDF because I feel like you have the Snarl right here to kind of support its special defense. You can definitely just have the Parting Shot right here on the Incineroar, help its physical and special defense, as well as the Intimidate coming in right here. So this is really supporting this, and the Groudon has a lot more bulk than the Koraidon with the 140 defense. A little bit lower SPDF, but again, you have that Snarl, you have that Parting Shot available to you. So I think that these Pokemon can support Groudon very, very good. And again, you basically have a second restricted here because you are getting the photosynthesis boost and you get the stat bump in your special attack. So you're just doing a lot of damage. Snarl does unexpected damage, actually. I've faced this Pokemon and I'm like, wow, that Snarl did a lot more than I was really prepared for. And then I put the 36 speed down here into the Groudon. You guys could feel free to change this up and let me know down in the comment section below what your thoughts are my EV spreads and what you would change up a little bit or how you run it. But I put the 36 speed here mainly to outspeed Rillabooms, right? I think a Rillaboom, if you have a Rillaboom that's wanting to kind of speed creep the meta a little bit, and I chose to do the safe route, and you could drop some of the speed off, but I think a Rillaboom that's like putting like 60, right? And then they're doing like 116 for the attack bump, which you do max here. only 4 defense, and then the rest in Spadef because they're usually like Assault Vest, right? So if a Rillaboom's running something like this, something similar to this, they are hitting that 113 speed stat, and I wanted my Groudon to be faster than that, so I feel like 115 is generally just safe, but you're still notably slower than Pelipper, right? You want to be slower than Pelipper so you can set that weather first outside of Trick Room, and Pelippers that are, again, they're going to run probably max speed. If they're max speed modest, right, try to take advantage of like the Focus Sash and some damage here. The reason I chose that to not go faster than that is like a max speed modest Pelipper is 117, right? Like if you do this modest right here, it's 117. So the Groudon underspeeds it, and the way that weather works is the slower Pokemon sets, or the faster Pokemon sets first. So in the interaction that would happen if, let's say you could lead your Groudon safely, because if they lead their Pelipper plus like, I don't know, let's say Urshifu, right? Or even Amoonguss or something, you could lead like Groudon Incin with like safety goggles, right? And then you could basically lead this out pretty safely. You're slower, so the Pelipper's going to interact first, and then it's going to set the rain, and then the Groudon's going to interact second and set the sun. So that's the reason I chose this speed stat, but you still outspeed the Rillaboom in case the Rillaboom can kind of, get you in a weird position with Woodhammer. And the fact that you know that you always live one, even without Intimidate support. With Intimidate support, you obviously always live one. Let's say you're in that in-game situation, right? And you're like, I don't know about this Rillaboom, it could KO me. The fact that with this EV spread, you always live one. I mean, it's 37% high roll, but you're generally going to live that Woodhammer, and you can fire back with a Heat Crash and just KO the Rillaboom. Very, very good for late game, in my opinion. One notable thing to mention is that if the Rillaboom is Miracle Seed, you will just need to Terra this defensively, which is why we do have the defensive Terra, and you need to save it for that. It's like 127% to KO. You never live that. Just getting the 20% boost just helps it so much, plus Grassy Terrain and Woodhammer. Usually they're like Terra Grass. But even if it's a defensive Terra, it doesn't matter. The Miracle Seed always KOs the Groudon. So that's one thing. Look on your sheets and make sure if you see that Assault Vest, you know you're pretty safe to kind of preserve this Terra and use it elsewhere for support or something like that. All right, lastly, I want to talk about this Raging Bolt, which was essentially just a very, very good Raging Bolt set for the Regulation F series, and that is that Leftovers Raging Bolt set. Leftovers Raging Bolt's very, very good. We have the Terra Fairy again. I don't think this will change much. We could see some other Terras kind of come out, but I mean, it's just such a good Terra type. Then you have the Thunderclap, just getting the special attacks, especially with the Calm Mind boost. It's getting special attacks, sucker punches off. It's just very, very valuable. Dragon Pulse, because you're wanting to boost up with Calm Mind, right? So you don't want Draco Meteor here, because Draco Meteor is going to lower your special attack by 2, and you're wanting to boost a Pokemon up. That's kind of counterintuitive, right? So you go ahead and just run this consistent Dragon Pulse just to get consistent 85 damage. No additional effect, but you're just doing a lot of damage with Calm Mind. Calm Mind, you're just getting a special attack, a special defense boost. Very, very nice to boost this Pokemon up. And then you have Protect. You just want to protect your Pokemon. As far as the EVs, 196 HP. You want to make this thing really, really bulky. 132 defense. This will live at Icicle Crash off of Chip-Bow. You're still getting the stat bump that we mentioned earlier in the 185 to 187 down here. A little bit of Spadef. You do not have the AV, so I wanted to invest some in Spadef. You could honestly probably drop this into 4 and just give it some more Spadef if you wanted to. I generally put 12 here just to try to like outrun a mirror. If you see something like this, I don't think they're going to be investing too much in speed, and a lot of people just run the 4 speed here. So I'd like my Thunderclaps to go first in like a mirror match or something like that. A good partner Pokemon with this, I think it would be just that Incineroar Rillaboom, right? And I know that that's a bit boring, but Incineroar is very, very good into the metagame. With the Incin, I mean, you could run it Safety Goggles to help out with Amoonguss that could kind of wall this and try to sleep this up, right? And you obviously run the Intimidate, so Flare Blitz just to handle the Amoonguss. Knockoff is needed for Calyrex for this metagame. Then the Parting Shot just to rotate out, and the Fake Out, so that way you can Fake Out plus Calm Mind. Rillaboom the same way. You're going to want to get that Grassy Surge. So with the Grassy Terrain, you're going to basically double up your heals with this Raging Bolt. You get the Leftovers plus the Grassy Terrain recovery, which is super nice. It helps this Pokemon stick to the field and then just cycle your partner Pokemon. In a turn, you could like, I don't know, Protect and then Parting Shot, lower the stats of a Pokemon, get your Rillaboom in. Then, you have the obvious Fake Out is live and loaded. Then you could like Fake Out plus Calm Mind again if you wanted to set up some more, or you could just start getting damage on the board, Fake Out and, get some huge damage off. Usually it's just like Fake Out, Calm Mind, keep on rotating. You do want to run the U-turn on this build just so that way these two Pokemon can rotate together. So you kind of set up your, what I call this is like Protect the King or Protect the Queen, where you basically just, this is the King or Queen, and you just want to essentially protect them at all costs, let them set up, And the reason I've paired this with Zamazenta is I think Zamazenta would be really, really good with something like this. Not only is Fairy Steel just an incredible typing, incredibly defensive typing, but Zamazenta is a scary Pokemon in this regulation. Zamazenta is everything we wanted out of it in Generation 8, but it's just like finally good, right? Zacian kind of overshadowed this, and I do think that Zacian Crown would be another good addition to this team. Like, you could add Zacian Crown here if you want more offense, and with that Behemoth Blade and stuff, but it has been kind of, you know, neutralized and stuff, but it gets like really cool moves, right? Sacred Sword, Play Rough can miss, and you will miss these. I miss these all the time. You could also like set up subs and stuff. And I think this could be a cool build with a team like this if you didn't want to go the Zamazenta route, because you do have the Fake Out substitute, right? Which then makes this Pokemon dodge those Intimidates. And I'll be honest, Zacian at neutral is just still going to do a ton of damage, right? Like, even if you get the Intrepid Sword off once and you get the +1 boost and they intimidate you, but you get a substitute setup, this Pokemon can still do some massive damage. And its job really is to come in the end game and just kind of like clean up end games anyway. So like, this Pokemon could be very, very scary for a team like this if you don't want the double setup. And this is a very, very good secondary option, I do feel, because you can spend the early game setting up your Raging Bolt with the Incineroar. Basically, they grind through the Raging Bolt. This KOs a bunch. You know, you may chip some damage here, get some Fake Outs, get some huge damage. Once they start chipping away your Pokemon, you guys have made some trades. Zacian comes in at +1 and essentially, you know, cleans up the end game, right? But I do like Zamazenta for this team. It could be a little bit passive and kind of crit bait with the way that these Pokemon want to set up. We'll go back to the Zamazenta. So Zamazenta carrying that Rusted Shield as it has to, the Dauntless Shield, it comes out at +1 defense. Behemoth Bash, you could run Heavy Slam here. It is something to note that Heavy Slam does KO Fluttermane even at -1 attack. So that's like very, very good. I do like the Behemoth Bash, though. I do think it's just a really cool and really good move. But the Heavy Slam may be more consistent in this slot, and I'm actually going to change it to Heavy Slam. I just think it's more consistent. I do think that this is a better move. Body Press, you know, oh, I had the Heavy Slam down here, excuse me. It's Iron Defense right here. So the Body Press, Iron Defense combo has been around forever. You see Pokemon setting this up all the time. And this is very, very good for Terapagos, breaking it, clearing that Terapagos. And it's just very scary, right? This Pokemon comes out at +1. It has Body Press, which is super effective into Incineroar. And what's Incineroar going to do, right? Switch in and intimidate this Pokemon? It doesn't matter. Body Press goes off the defense stat, not the attack stat, and the damage calculation. So this thing will laugh, set up an Iron Defense in Incineroar's face, or with the Rillaboom maybe faking it out or something, right? Or it just creates pressure where you have to kind of fake this Pokemon out, and your partner Pokemon can get some value. So that's very nice. And then you can Iron Defense, fake out Iron Defense, right? And you're +3 on turn 1. Very, very scary Pokemon. Body Press being your effective damage kind of sucks, though. Like, fighting damage is really hard in the metagame. There's a lot that resist fighting or is immune to it. So it is kind of hard to get this Pokemon rolling, but I do think setup, this Pokemon can be scary. And again, if you don't want to use the Zamazenta, Zacian is a very, very good, you know, change to this team that you could add and test out. And I think Zacian could be an offensive piece that maybe the team wants for the end game. Obviously, you have the Protect for setting this Pokemon up, and then, you know, if you get a +3, they have to target this Pokemon down. But the reason this is scary is because you can just Iron Defense, Body Press, get this thing to +3, have the, you know, Calm Mind Bolt on your team. So they have to figure out, okay, well, I need to bring my physical stuff to break Bolt, right? But I need to bring my special stuff to break Zamazenta, and it really becomes a mind game at that. It's like you have options to kind of set up. You have the setup King and Queens here that just basically do the best setup job in the game with the Fake Out U-turn, Fake Out Parting Shot. If you have the Zacian on team, you have to worry about, okay, they're setting up physically or specially, but they have this physical monster on the team. This is a nightmare on Team Sheet, really. This is, you really have to play into this very, very well. I think it's very balanced, and we can see this as the meta grows do a lot better. I do think a good addition to a team like this would be something like the Pelipper and Amoonguss. I think, like, if you were to add the Pelipper Amoonguss over the Rillaboom, it could be good. But I do think setup wants the Rillaboom more. Pelipper could just help, you know, support the Zamazenta, the Zacian on the fire side, so that opposing Incineroar aren't hitting you for super effective Flare Blitzes. I mean, they are, but it's weakened in the rain. Plus the Pelipper, you know, it gets Wide Guard, which is just super valuable for the Calyrex Shadow Mirror. But you can also run other Pokemon in those slots. Anything that really just helps balance out. I mean, with the Rillaboom, you may not want to double up on the Amoonguss slot. Maybe something like a Clefairy could be pretty cool to kind of help with maybe the Mirror Match here. And, you know, you get the Friend Guard on the Clefairy. Follow Me really, really helps out in the Eviolite. And then this team all of a sudden becomes very, very hard to break. But the issue, again, is if you're running something like this, right, this is kind of passive. So just be wary that this is kind of asking to be critically hit. But you get the Zamazenta set up very, very, like, within a few turns, and you're rolling out massive damage. Same with the Raging Bolt. You get a Calm Mind off or two, you're dealing massive damage, right? I do think that this can be a very, very good team, either with Zamazenta or Zacian, and then just kind of pick your supports you want. Incineroar, of course, on these teams. That's going to be it for the video. Let me know down below how you're running your Raging Bolt and what you think about Raging Bolt being a cheat code for Regulation G. I think this Pokemon is absolutely amazing. It doesn't need the sun to be abused, but I do think its statistics are just like a restricted Pokemon, which is insane considering you don't have 2 restricted slots yet. So you're basically essentially statistically running a second restricted. I hope this video helped you out, and hopefully I can see you guys doing well with your own Raging Bolts. Keep practicing, and until the next time, I'll see you on the next video.